Listen to the rumble. Listen to the roar. Slowly in 3. They'll be flying off 4. Watch them now.
What's it like to win the Indy 500? How can anyone answer that question? When I hear someone ask that question to a former winner of the 500, I tend to roll my eyes at the generic nature of the question. I've heard it compared to the moment your first child was born, your wedding night. I've heard there is no comparison. So what is it like to win it 3 times? Can that even be put into words so that it will you'll accurately feel and understand what that's like? I don't think so. That's why when I got the chance to sit down with 3-time Indy 500 winner Johnny Rutherford, I not only didn't ask him that, I didn't even want to talk to him about Indy cars. Stories and recounts of Rutherford's Indy career can be found in numerous places, not only in books, but on film and interviews and documentaries. There's stuff on YouTube. There's a really a lot of stuff out there on Rutherford that's a pleasure to watch. When I got the chance to talk racing with this legend, I told him I wanted to talk about one thing: sprint cars. Rutherford raced, won, and survived, barely, as you will hear, one of the toughest, most grueling, and talent-filled era of American sprint car racing, the 1960s. He was in there with Foyt, Hurtubise, Jones, you name the big dogs in sprint car and USAC, this guy was in there with them and winning. I was told that Mr. Rutherford only gives about 15 to 20-minute interviews when I got permission to do this podcast. We sat down and he spoke about sprint cars for nearly an hour. It was awesome to see him light up and get excited about sprint cars. You can tell a lot of these stories he's reaching deep to remember. It's not stuff he talks about every day. And it was really cool to see. He's got a great memory, and it's very detailed for him to talk about his first rides and how he got rides. Another cool thing about this is that we recorded this at the Milwaukee Mile during the Millers at Milwaukee event. So we were in the media center, and the entire time we do this podcast, outside you can hear in this recording Offie engines and Miller engines and early IndyCar engines, basically front engine and back, screaming by on the front straightaway and running laps. And it's just so fitting that while Johnny Rutherford tells his stories about running sprint cars, you can hear Offie-powered sprint cars and Indy cars going by in the background. Enjoy it. I was very, very honored and lucky to get this, and couldn't wait to share it with you. No worries. No worries. What I want to talk to you about today is mostly sprint car and the fairground circuits and IMSA, because a lot of the people that listen to my podcast are into open wheel, midgets, dirt, sprint cars, pavement, that kind of stuff.
Yes.
And I know you have a really good history with that.
Yes, that's sprint cars, the way I learned to race, so to speak. I started out in Texas at the old Devil's Bowl Speedway in the Rock Quarry, and built my car winter of 1958, and it was a 32 Chevrolet 5-window coupe that had been a race car, but in a different kind of rules package. And so I was in a hot rod club where I live now, River Oaks, Texas.
What was the name of the club?
The Idlers.
Oh, that's cool. Did you guys have the plaques, the aluminum plaques?
I've still got my plaque, yes,
that's
and
awesome.
Everything. I'm going to put it on my 34 when it's finished. And so I bought this 32 Chevrolet coupe and towed it back to the clubhouse, and we had a place there under the shade trees where we could haul engines out and do things. But anyway, and I had a 1956 Chevrolet V8, 265 cubic inches.
Okay. Yeah, that's
yeah,
a good one.
early ones. And so anyway, proceeded to build a race car for me to start my racing career, and I started in April of 1959 and raced my car for a season and a half, or actually a season.
Were there racetracks real close to you, or did you have to drive a ways to get to them?
I had to, I had a tow bar on the car and towed it behind me, and then I met this girl, and her dad worked for a steel company, and he built me a trailer.
Oh, wow.
So
Luxury.
I had a trailer to tow my car on, and we raced in Waco, Texas, and we raced in Texarkana, or out near Texarkana, and but it, that and the Devil's Bowl, that was about all you could do, and hold a job and work and everything else. So anyway, raced in Texas for the first season, 59, and then in 60 started the season driving another car at the Devil's Bowl, and it was a unique car because it was a 1938 Chevrolet frame, which is a wider frame.
Yeah.
And it had a international 6-cylinder pickup truck engine in it.
Oh my, that sounded good.
Yeah, and it had a lot of torque, but getting it to tune it up to run was the next thing.
Okay. Was there any speed equipment available for that?
I'm not sure. He might have. I don't know if he got a cam or what. Anything like that, or crank. I found out that he had to take it to 7 machine shops to get it cleaned up.
Wow.
Because they take those blocks at International, and they pour them and I guess clean them up, throw them out in the field, and leave them for 4 years.
Really?
So they work cold, hot.
Really?
Cold, hot. And that's what makes them so hard to clean up and do anything with.
Yeah.
Change the bore size.
Case hardened, basically?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, case hardened.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, I drove that car, and then Jim McElreath and I left Texas.
How'd you meet Jim? You mentioned him last night.
He raced at the Devil's Bowl.
That's an excellent name in racing.
Yeah, Jimmy McElreath. Anyway, he was leaving to come up into the Midwest to try to get into IMCA and do some sprint car racing and go to Indianapolis, and so he had a pickup truck with a Olds 88 V8 engine in it, which was pretty strong, and a camper on the back, and we lived in the camper and traveled to the Midwest, and it was an experience to run, back then. Got my first sprint car ride in IMCA at La Crosse, Wisconsin.
Okay. Small block Chevy car by then?
Yes, it was. It was. Yes. In fact, the car belonged to Merle Heath from. What was the little town in that clump of Devonport and all around? But anyway, it was a. Pop Dreyer had built the chassis.
That's excellent.
And it was a really good handling little car. I mean, it was good. Had the Chevrolet. I think it was originally built for a 220, and he put a Chevrolet in it.
That would make sense.
It was wide enough to just,
In this era, we're to try to get young guys to relate today. There's no social media. There's no email, none of that. How did you show up in the Midwest and get the word out that here I am, I'm a driver, I want to ride? Did you just have to go talk to guys and meet guys? And
we walked. McElreath had a ride.
Okay.
He had a.
So you had a voucher, kind of.
He already had a car for him. And we went to the pit gate at La Crosse and walked in, and I asked the guy signing in. I said I wanted to sign in, and were there any open cars available, out in the field? he said, yeah, we've got a couple of them that don't have drivers listed. And he gave me the numbers and the thing. So I looked really young, you know, and I was 21 years old, or 22 years old. And so anyway, he questioned. I had to show him a driver's license and the date of my birth and everything. But anyway, he signed me in, and I went in and looked at the cars, and the car that I picked was pink and white with blue numbers, I think, on it, and it belonged to Burl Heath. And
were you looking at just cleanness of the car, quality of the car,
yes,
what it was powered by?
Yeah, it was. You know, it looked like it had been well cared for.
Yeah.
And the old man was rubbing on it when I got there, and I asked him if he had a driver, could I warm it up, drive it for him that day, and he kind of wondered about my age as well, and so he said, well, my driver said he probably wouldn't make it, but we'll see. So got closer to warm-ups, and he said, yeah, where'd you ever run sprint cars before? And I said, well, in Texas. And he knew that there wasn't any sprint car series in Texas. So anyway, he let me warm it up, and Frank Winkley, the IMCA promoter, came down and watched me warm up and said, yeah, we'll start him in the back of the heat race.
Yeah, that's calm. That's good. Yeah.
And so I got to start in the back of the heat race, and we started the heat, and I don't know if they were limited on water or what, but the track was so dusty, I couldn't even see the instruments.
Oh, jeez.
And you know, it was terribly dusty, and I got to the outside in the cloud of doom, and just as I got, I was trying to figure out where everybody went, and I went over the edge. Track didn't have a back guardrail. It just had the infield pushed back and made the back straightaway. And I went off the edge. I knew if I turned it back, I'd high side it and maybe roll it over. So I just took it down the hill. And the farther I went around to nearly to turn 3, the taller the weeds got. And so I pulled up down there and pulled it out of gear and shut the fuel off and killed the engine, and thought, okay. So I just got out, climbed up the bank, and looked down in turn 2 where I'd gone off, and it looked like World War III had just happened, because every red light and people running and everything, and the cars were still on the track coming up backstretch, and A.J. Shepard and Leroy Newmeyer were driving for Diz Wilson, and as I popped up over the edge, they both saw me and pointed to me at the same time. Here he is.
They were looking for you.
And so anyway, I went back to the pits, and I thought they're going to send me home for sure, and Winkley came over and said, glad you're all right, you did the right thing. He said, you're not the only one. Last year, Pete Foltz, our champion, went off there.
Oh, that made you feel a little better.
Yes. But anyway, that was my beginning in IMCA sprint car racing.
Was it a big jump from what you had been driving when you got in a sprint car? Immediately, like horsepower-wise, speed-wise? Or did it?
It was. I had basically a stock engine, and the sprint car without the flywheel and everything is a whole new ball game.
Yeah.
I've often I told the people last night my favorite statement about sprint cars is driving a sprint car is like slapping a mountain lion in the ass with a handful of cockleburrs.
That is exactly
You just better be ready when you want it to go. So that was.
My wife liked that because it portrayed it well.
Yeah,
she's been around sprint car racing and she knows what she's looking at.
Yeah.
But that brings it together.
Yes. Well, that's the way it is. You just better be ready.
Wow.
But it's, I enjoyed my sprint car racing and ran 3 years in IMCA and learned a lot about racing because of all the different types of dirt tracks we went to. It was, dirt's not just dirt. It's all different kinds of dirt, all different moistures that you can create on it and dryness you can create on it. And learning how to handle that, I think, helped me and Foyt and Hurtubise and Parnelli and everybody know that extra edge that you can feel in a sprint car. On the pavement especially, you just go so far. You get sideways, you're losing time.
Yeah. And you guys were, when it started to dance, you were used to that. You'd been there before.
No, we'd been there.
Some guys hadn't been there before.
That's right. That's right.
And you could say, yeah, that's fine. Let's come back.
But a lot of us transferred from IMCA. Troy Ruttman. Oh gosh, there was a lot of drivers that went to the Speedway and did well.
Was IMCA? What kind of portion of IMCA was following the fair circuit? A lot of it?
All of it.
All of it, okay.
All of it, but there were two groups.
Okay, that's what I'm trying to wonder, because I've read about this.
Al Sweeney had the one group, and I can't remember what he called it now, and then Frank Winkley had the other. They split the big state fairs and so on. Minnesota State Fair and Des Moines were Frank Winkley's, and there were others that were Sweeney's, and so we, you went back and forth when you could, and so the last year I drove IMCA, we did 73 races that summer.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah.
That's excellent. That's almost that's 3 nights a week, sometimes 4 to do that.
Yes.
Wow. Now, if you go to a fair race, would they race a couple nights at that same fair, like a Friday and Saturday?
Some of them would, but state fairs usually had a double feature.
When you were talking about the different dirt, did you or any of the guys you ran with did you ever run knobby tires?
Oh gosh, yes.
I've always heard that you didn't want to follow guys with knobby.
Oh no.
I've been told that.
we did warm-ups. You just go slow around the track until they throw the green. And but every now and then on the straightaway, you'd get in it just to see how it was going to accelerate. And I was behind Pete Foles and Hector Honori's black Bardall Deuce.
Oh yeah,
270 Offie.
It's one of my favorite cars. I like that car.
he coming off turn 2 down the front straightaway, he whomped it like that, and I didn't duck. And my cover lenses and my goggles and my visor and everything went away.
Wow. Just clean it up.
Oh yeah.
Daggone.
Yeah, the knobs, but you could really get, and there if you had to drive knobs a certain way.
I've been told that.
You drive them hard down the straightaway, and when you turn them in, you can back off and get the car set, and you best not lift till you get down to the other end of the racetrack.
Guys told me, if you breathe on it, you're taking a ride.
That's right.
They got to be digging.
It'll hook up, and you may go end over end or side for side or whatever.
Wow. When you were running sprint cars, do you remember any big changes that came along that you felt was like the hot setup? Something that really changed the feel of the car? I know the humper tires, the wider stuff, that was later.
Yes, there were different tires and different setups.
Was everything you drove injected, or were there some carbureted cars you drove?
No, they were injected.
Okay.
Yeah, Hilburn injections.
Wow.
And
was there any weight limits in IMCA back then? Wow.
No, run what you brung.
Man, that's cool.
Yeah. It probably chassis designs started changing a bit and went from parallel bars to crossbars.
Yeah.
Still, the best feeling system was the spring front and the crossbar rear.
Okay.
But then Steve Stapp created the stack bars, which made the arms the same length.
Yeah, and that changed it.
And so that was a comfortable feeling. You know, it just, you know, you tuned it to the stack bars and then
Were shocks back then?
yes,
They just were what you got.
didn't have a clue about shocks very much because it was something, you know, the tube shocks.
Yeah.
You know, the hood eyes were still being used, but the new tubular bodied shocks, you could change the stiffness of the rebound and stuff, and it took a while to realize that made a hell of a difference, and it does, especially in the Indy cars, the big cars.
Yeah.
You know, you got to.
That's
you've
the
got
era
to-
when you would see like 2 and 3, you know, multiple shocks per corners of cars. Like in
Yeah.
the Indy Roadsters, they had 2
Yes.
on the right side, stuff like that. And it seems like that's the first time guys started playing with shocks.
Yes.
And now, you know, today it's
Yes.
a science of its own.
It's a new deal.
With all the sprint cars you drove, does one stick out as just being the baddest one, or maybe the most comfortable?
The car that I drove for Miskowski and won the national championship in USAC in
What year was that?
was
60.
65. I won the championship, and the car was built probably in 59 or 60.
So was that like a big round tube chassis or a space tube?
Space tube.
Wow. So that was a new bad dude. That was Miskowski though. He was a sharp guy.
He didn't build the car.
Really?
No.
Okay.
The guy I keep drawing a blank on his, and I knew him quite well, one of the great 10 benders and car builders. Anyway, the car was built and had set in his front of his shop. He had a little room that was intended to be an office, and he had the car sitting there. And I remember seeing it in there because I always went over to see him. I nearly said it.
I'm thinking of it too. Did he build roadsters as well?
He built Indy
It
car.
wasn't Epperly, was it?
No, Quinn Epperly, no. Quinn was noted for his lay-down chassis that he built, and this was a guy built dirt cars, and anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway, the car sat there for at least 2 years. I remember going over to see what he was up to and see what was new, and he had the car there, and Wally evidently saw it. It was the frame, front axle, oil tank, and the body, and the fuel tank, and he built it for Roy Reed and another guy at Ascot.
Okay.
That was going to run it in Ascot, and they couldn't afford it. It cost more than they had intended. So
Gotcha.
anyway, it sat there. Wally bought it, took it back to Indianapolis, and finished it up. And had a lot of Foyt drove it, and Chuck Hulse drove it, and Bobby Marshman drove it, and Bud Tinglestead drove it.
When you would climb in a car like that with a guy like Miskowski and everyone that's been in that car and been fast, did you give a lot of input, or was it you just drove what Miskowski gave you and that was your job to make it fast?
Yeah. No, my card says driver.
Yeah.
You know.
Easiest part on the car to change is the driver.
The driver. That's right.
If you don't like it, we'll get someone else.
Yes. Anyway, the first time, I'm kind of skipping over some stuff. I drove an IMCA for Diz Wilson.
Oh, yeah.
And,
Out of Bloomington, Indiana area.
Yeah, it was
south.
in Mitchell.
Mitchell, yep,
Indiana.
Was it yellow?
Yeah. Has he? No, mine was red.
Oh, you got lucky.
You know why they were yellow and orange?
Did it have to do with school bus?
He was right across the street from a cool school bus factory, and whenever they were painting bodies, he just took his over there and got them painted.
That sounds like a racer.
But this is a red one, and this car he bought in Florida and brought it home. Had history, great history.
Cool.
It was the old Pat Clancy six-wheeler.
Oh, wow.
Made into a sprint car.
I was always told that car, because people have asked me about that car, and I said, I've read that it got switched back to four-wheel configuration.
Yes, it did. In fact, it was a four-wheeler at Springfield when Jimmy Davies won the 100-mile championship race there with it.
That's cool.
And it was just a big old rocking chair. Diz brought it back and was going to shorten it up, so he just shortened it up 10 inches, and it was still 106 inches long wheelbase.
Oh, wow.
So
that was a big car.
Big car. And anyway, but it was it had a 270 in it, and it was, first Offie that I ever got to drive was that one.
You've probably been asked this a bazillion times. What was the biggest difference between an Offie and a small block? Torque difference?
The torque in the Offie, and because it had a flywheel, it didn't wind up like a Chevrolet.
Okay.
That's why I say driving a Chevrolet is like slapping a mountain lion. The Chevrolet, when you get after it, it comes on right now and goes. And the Offenhauser takes it a little while, but when you get her up on the cams and get it cranking and everything, it's got a lot of grunt.
Yeah.
A lot of grunt.
Man, that's cool.
But anyway, this Wally's sprint car, after all these guys had driven it and run it, McCluskey crashed it at Reading, broke his arm, and found out that Wally had a Novi wheel, they called it. It was built for the Novi at the Speedway, and it was really tucked in.
Okay. Oh.
And so he hauled her down in the corner, and she,
Yeah.
tried to bicycle, but it went on past the bicycle stage. And anyway, so we made sure that I hid that wheel from him so he wouldn't try to put it on. But anyway, I was driving for Steve Stapp in his new stack bar car at Raceway Park in Indianapolis.
Was it dirt then still?
No, it
had been paved.
Yeah, it had been paved, and so it was paved. And the car felt so good and so, stuck to the track and felt so good. I drove it in turn 3, and it ran out of racetrack, hit the wall. And Steve was upset, and I don't blame him. But anyway, he was upset and he fired me.
Oh, right.
So I told him then I said, Steve, are you sure? He says, yes, I don't want you driving my car again. I said, okay, but I'm going to win the championship. Oh yeah. So he went, and Foyt was driving Wally's car, and he told Foyt he wanted to get his car repaired and have him drive it. And so I went to Wally and said, yeah, let me drive your car.
Put me in there.
Okay, so Eldora was the next race.
That was April 3rd, 1960.
No, it was April 3rd was the day I
took a ride.
Crashed
Okay.
and went out of the racetrack. But anyway, we went to Eldora night race.
Oh, okay.
And it was, I'd run enough dirt. When we got there, I walked down in the first turn, and it was banked, high bank dirt track, and so when they watered it, water runs downhill, and it gets around the bottom. And I went down and I stuck my heel in about that deep. I thought, oh, okay, we'll see.
Yeah.
And we had, I can't remember what kind of a time I posted, but I wasn't in the front 4 or 5, 3 rows, maybe 2 rows, 3 rows. And so I knew this all might work, and we got ready for the feature and pushed off, and I was in the lineup, and everybody liked to run against the fence at Eldora or in the middle of the track, to get traction and go. And So we came around and got the green flag, and we went in the corner, and I just dove for the bottom, right around the bottom, came out on the backstretch, and I was leading. And I thought, is there a yellow?
Can't be that easy.
Yeah, was there a yellow? You know, no. And I led the thing and was leading it to win. And in 27 laps, the Firestone Lightning drag he had on the right rear, they wouldn't go 30 laps on a sprint car.
Wow.
And I had no knowledge of that, but tire went down, and Wally said, "I'll never put another Lightning drag on you again."
Wow.
And we started winning races.
Wow. Man, that's cool.
Yeah.
That is awesome. Man, what was he like to drive for, work for?
Good.
Good.
He had, and of course I guess he liked the fact that I didn't bug him about tires and gears and things like that. It was, you know, it's a race car, and you set it up, fix it up, I'll drive it. If we can't, we'll figure out something else to do if it doesn't work right. So, and it always worked right. You know, it's a good race car. You know, I had never driven a sprint car. That first night at Eldora, when I went into the bottom of the racetrack, I had never driven a race car that got as much forward bite as it got side bite.
Really? Wow.
And it just, you know, I mean, right around the corner, and I was leading it coming out on the backstretch.
Man, that's cool. You mentioned Redding. Tell me about Redding. I never got to see Redding. I've only seen pictures, but it looks fast.
It was pretty fast. I don't remember numbers on the thing in the 22s, I'm sure, you know, for a half mile. And
that's one thing that amazes me that I tell young guys when they're racing today. I say, if you take some time and look at track records, if you see a track record set today, and then go back and look at what the record was in the 60s, it's not a big difference.
Yeah.
It's not like, you know, several seconds.
Well,
it's a couple seconds.
You know, for in the 60s, for a sprint car to have 450, 500 horsepower was a bunch. Now they're 800 and 900 horsepower.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And it's, you know.
But you guys, I mean, the times you guys were cutting in the 60s and 70s were flying.
Without cages or roll bars, and, you know.
That's another thing I know people are going to want to know about. You know, what's it like to drive a car without a cage? And the only thing I can say to that is I have to remind people that you guys, there wasn't a choice. It wasn't like there was a cage car. That's the way it was to you. That's what a race car was.
Yes.
It wasn't like you knew better. That was it.
Yeah. Yeah. When the cages first came out, I thought they were, you know, they were going to be lethal because most of them weren't hooked to the car properly, and
there is that.
You get upside down and land on that thing, it's gonna hurt you as bad as a race car or the wall would. You know? So I was not a fan of the cages.
Did you think it was going to make guys too brave?
Well, that's the first thought you had. You know, people would say, "Oh, these guys are going to be crazy," you know, now with that. And you know, I don't recall any incident that you could blame the cage on. The guy was just too brave.
Gotcha.
I don't, you know, I
cage
think
or no cage, he just was.
Know, the object is still not to crash.
yeah, you got to finish. That is interesting. Let's talk about Eldora real quick. Your ride out of Eldora. It's a famous picture. I remember my dad showing me that picture when I was a kid.
That was something. Yes, it was.
Every racer's got their big one.
I won the championship in '65, and we went to season, and Wally was building and had built a new car for me to drive.
You were carrying the number one in that picture too.
Yeah. Yes, I was. I was a champion, so it was, in fact, it was Johnny Rutherford Day at Eldora Speedway.
You put on a show.
No, I really did. Anyway, the first race of the season was at Redding.
Okay.
And the guy that worked with Wally, kind of a grunt, changed the gears, put the gears Wally told me to put in, but he forgot to put the grease back in the rear end.
Okay.
And we went to Reading, and I ran 2 or 3 laps of warm-ups, and I said, this thing's, the back, the gear, something's going on in the back. It was tying up, and so I out of gear, been to the pits. Wally checked it out, and that had to be rebuilt. So we took it home and rebuilt it, and then
You mean you didn't have extra rear ends and front axles inside your semi-truck like today?
On an open trailer? Are you kidding?
Yeah, one rear end, one engine.
Right, had the car.
Yeah,
the car. Maybe some extra wheels or something and tires.
Yeah, that's how it was.
Yeah, but anyway, so they fixed it, and we went to Eldora, and it was the first race of the year at Eldora in April, and the track is always terrible.
Yeah.
It's got rocks, and it's got, it just is.
One of the years we were racing, we got snowed out of that race.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's always, but everyone looks forward to the Eldora opener.
Oh, yeah.
That was part of my childhood.
Oh, yeah.
And you're right, it was always terrible.
Terrible racetrack. Rough, usually it's too wet. Anyway, so we did not qualify well. Mario Andretti was driving the car that I had won the championship in.
Okay.
And so that was, I can't remember if I out-qualified him. I must have, because I was running about 5th or 6th in the feature, and Mario was behind me. And Wally came out and told me to move up. So I thought, well, maybe he's seeing somebody else do something. I'll see what it is. So I moved up, and Mario goes yodeling by,
Shit.
So now I'm
Elbows up.
I'm going after it, and the car was terrible. I mean, it was awful to drive. And in fact, later on, I forget where I got to drive it again, but you could give it a pitch at the start-finish line, and it wouldn't get side bite till it hit the fence in the first turn.
Jeez.
Terrible car. Anyway, so Mario's gone by me, and I'm setting him. I'm getting ready, moving in, watching him, see where I might be able to take him, and run up behind him and turn between turn 1 and 2. And I had just flipped my flip shield. I had open face helmets, flipped my flip shield back because it had some mud on it, dirt on it. And he picked up a rock or clod or something and hit me right between the eyes. I've still got the goggles that are shattered.
Wow.
Right here. And it gained my undivided attention, and I hooked, evidently relaxed on the throttle, and that's the worst thing to do on a heavy dirt track. And it hooked, went back the other side, dug in the left rear with where the weight in the chassis was, dug in and started flipping, hit the guardrail at the top, and then sailed up in the air with that famous picture that me hanging out of the car.
Yeah.
The thing that really upset me about that whole picture was that Dayton Daily News the next day put it in the front of the sports page, and the guy labeled it, "Rutherford waves to the crowd as he leaves the racetrack."
on Rutherford Day, nonetheless.
Yeah, right.
Oh, man. Some of us have looked over Eldora's banking before they put all the parking in over there, and it goes straight way down to a creek down there.
Yes, thank God it landed nose first.
Okay.
And skithered out, because when it did that, I was stretched out. My arms came down on top of the windshield.
Wow.
And broke both arms, and had severe concussion.
Were you awake when they got to you? They had to have been thinking they were going to find the words.
I could hear guys scrambling down the banking, rocks falling, and little pebbles and stuff falling, and I thought I recognized the voice of one of the guys that got there, and he said, "You okay?" And I said, "My arms hurt and I can't see anything." And I had the bloodshot eyes.
Wow.
Solid red bloodshot in the whites, and from the center, a space doctor in Houston told me that I had pulled in excess of 10 negative G's to do that.
Jeez.
And so anyway,
that's a testament of how tough you are. I mean,
well, I don't know. I guess I was in good shape.
yeah, exactly. I mean, you said you're racing 3-4 nights a week.
Yeah.
That's the best gym you can go to. But
Yep.
man, did it junk the car totally?
No, Wally.
As bad as the car was, you were probably hoping.
Yeah. Wally saved it. He told me later that one frame tube was an 1/8 inch shorter than the other one when he got it all just, opened up and looked at and everything.
Yeah.
And he didn't know where that went. But anyway.
Wow.
Anyway,
Wow.
it was.
That put you out for the season?
Yes.
Yeah.
I was out for the season.
Man. Wow.
Yeah.
Unreal. You drove for Smokey Unick and stock cars?
Yes.
Tell me, I'm a big Smokey Unick fan, and
Yeah.
and any racer worth his salt is. Tell me what that was like.
It's kind of unusual. It was racing IMCA sprint cars in '62, and I had a friend who was a Pontiac dealer in Dallas, and he called me and said, "Did you ever think you'd like to run a stock car?"
Was it paying decent then? Stock cars, were they worth the time?
Yeah, that was NASCAR was
Okay.
just underway,
And they were paying and worth
and
worth
Bill
messing
France
with.
had built the Daytona Speedway, which
Okay.
is currently still exists.
Yeah.
Anyway, he said, "You think you'd like to run a stock car?" I said, "Yeah, I'd run anything." And so he said, "Come on over here and I'll call him." So I went over to Dallas and went to his office, and he dialed his number and called his guy and said, yes, we've talked and da-da-da-da-da-da. And he said, "Yeah, he's right here, I'll put him on." And he handed me the phone and said, "Here, talk to Smokey Unick." I nearly dropped the phone, I said, "Holy cow."
It'd be like getting.
He said, "How soon can you be here?" And I said, "I'll be there tomorrow if you need me." He says, "Well, do that and come to the shop."
Wow.
So I packed up and hauled ass for Daytona Beach and got there, and it was dusk, and all of the windows were painted black from the inside, and in fact, the whole place looked like it was flat black. But anyway, knocked on the door, and one of the guys opened the door and said, "Yeah, what do you want?" I said, "I'm Johnny Rutherford, supposed to see Smokey Unick." "Hey, Smokey, your driver's here."
That sounded
So
good.
they took me out, took me inside, and started fitting me in the seat. And
What kind of car?
Chevrolet Impala.
Oh, man.
And it was a fire breather, as it turned out.
Really?
Yeah.
That had
So
to have been fun.
It was a new experience.
Yeah.
We went to the track and got signed in and everything. And he said, "You're going to need to we got to the garage. He said, "You're going to need to have somebody to ask questions about this place." So he said, "I'll be right back." He went away, gone for about 10 minutes, 15 minutes, came back with two guys in tow. And he said, "Here, I want you to meet Fireball Roberts and Joe Weatherly."
Oh, geez.
And they were my tutors for my first Daytona
Jeez.
500.
That's awesome. Wow.
Little Joe was having problems with his car, so he didn't, I didn't want to bug him.
Yeah.
But Fireball was good. He was a neat guy, and he helped me out with a couple of things, and he'd check in with me and say, "What are you doing?" And then he saw that I was outrunning everybody, and so he probably wished he had it
Yeah,
right.
did the information
he had
stop?
won the Daytona 500 the year before for Smokey in a Pontiac.
Okay.
Well, then Smokey Chevrolet had Bunky Knudsen told Smokey, "You pick out any engine you want in our inventory, whatever you think you want to do." and build us a engine and a car for Daytona.
Wow.
And so he told me that he picked a 402 truck engine that was a Porcupine. It didn't have head bolts, it had studs.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And so you put the heads on the studs.
Yeah.
You know, anyway, so that's what I was told and what I've always thought. But,
Yeah. Man.
Anyway,
I've seen pictures of those cars in that era running, and when you see those big cars in the turns, they look like they're hung out just a tick. Mm-hmm. Were they just hung out all the time? That was the fast way around?
That's kind of the way they set up, I think, and it was different. The cars were stock cars then.
Yeah.
Just
real stock cars.
Virtually, they were beefed up in certain areas, and roll cages made, some stiffness to the things. But it's not like today. Those are race cars.
Yeah.
They're
Were they
built.
physically abusive? Was it hard to run 500 miles in those compared to anything else?
Depends. There was a lot of things that happened, took place, that you had, the wind currents were something you had to learn.
Yeah.
And I was driving the car in there. I won the 100-mile qualifying race in the car, and anyway, it was an incredible experience.
Man, that's cool. Couple more things I want to ask you about. I didn't know you spoke fluent Spitfires and airplanes.
Well, P-51 Mustang. I had 2 of them at one time.
That's the ultimate hot rod, really.
Yeah,
I mean,
it is.
It
so
is.
much like an Indy car.
Okay.
You've got to, just got to really pay attention.
Really?
Because it's a
How light? What do they weigh? I mean, they just
7,000 pounds.
And horsepower, just
1,600 horsepower.
Man.
4-bladed, 11-foot 2-inch 4-bladed ham standard prop.
Wow.
And
wow.
Liquid cooled.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
That's what that scoop on the bottom was, the radiator.
Oh, okay.
So it pulled, and it was no drag.
Wow. No drag through there, putting air through there.
Putting air through that.
Those guys were so smart.
Oh yeah, yeah, they really figured it out, and that was the ultimate fighter plane. I've seen shows today. They have one on the channel that shows all of the, they've had top 10 best planes. The P-51 still number 1.
How did you end up with? I mean, is it hard to hard to find?
I'm a pilot. Okay. Have been since '67, I guess, when I got my pilot's license. And my dad was a aircraft engine mechanic, and I've had friends of his tell me that he was one of the best they'd ever seen. He could hear an engine running and tell you what's wrong with it, and you shut her down and tear it down, and that's what's wrong with it.
Wow.
So anyway, I was very, very proud of my hero dad.
Yeah.
And but anyway, we always had boats or race cars or airplanes, and so I liked aviation, and my hobby is aviation, and my life is racing. My dad's hobby was racing, and his life was aviation.
Man, that's cool.
And so anyway, he was chief of maintenance for the Oklahoma Air National Guard after World War II, and it was a P-51 fighter squadron. So I got to go to the hangar and sit in Mustangs when I was 9, 10, 11, 12 years old.
Make engine noises and all that.
and the Mustang was just the greatest airplane. But anyway, that carried on, and I came across some friends that had warbirds, different types and things. Got interested in the warbird EAA situation.
Just 1970s, 80s in there?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Actually, the early 70s.
Okay.
And I found a P-51 for sale in Dallas. A dentist owned it, and he was, had flown it all he wanted to, I guess.
Yeah.
And so I went over and looked at it and bought the thing. And had a friend, an American airline captain, who was had been a fighter pilot and he flew jets. But anyway, he went with me over there, and he flew me back home, and he showed me things not to do, and with the thing, because of the torque in it is incredible.
That can get you in trouble.
Yeah,
And those.
if you're on final at 110 miles an hour, and you're set up, and suddenly you're getting crosswind blowing you off of the runway, and you reach up and you shove that throttle clear to the stop, the airplane will roll over inverted with the torque going that slow.
Yeah.
And the first thing most guys want to do is, I got to go up.
Oh, yeah.
So
I didn't even think engine torque, rotational torque in an airplane.
And yes.
I forgot.
Yes.
You forget about that.
Yeah.
Wow. Man.
So, anyway, but the Mustang, I've got a couple of 100 hours on a P-51, and I had two of them. Bought the first one from the dentist in Dallas, and flew it for 2 or 3 years, and found one on a flatbed truck, disassembled, all good, had a burnt-up engine, and in California at Chino, and that's the famous warbird haven for getting them rebuilt and stuff.
Okay.
And anyway, had it rebuilt in Chino. There's a company there that it took a couple of years, and it got it back.
Were parts hard to find at all? Are they? I mean,
starting to be.
Okay.
Starting to be.
I know they made a lot of them, but that doesn't mean.
Yeah, I had 4 paddle blades, which I was proud of. Put them in. I was out there for the run-up on the engine, and I was standing out at the end of the wing looking at the prop, and I could see the blades moving back and forth like that, and that's not right.
Yeah.
So I told the guy, to cut it off, and we started looking, and one of the blades was bent in the shank, so we had to take the prop apart again.
Wow.
Sent it to the company that had done them. Don't know why they didn't find it the first time.
Yeah.
But they said, no, we can't. It can't be straightened up because it's too low in the shank. So I had to search for another blade. Found one, got it all together, and then got the airplane finished up, paid off, and flew it back. Flew it to Texas from California.
Man, that's cool.
Yeah.
Well, now you're restoring a Kurtis Midget.
Yes, I have a 1946 when it was built.
Wow.
Kurtis Craft. It was a kit car. It was built in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Bill Stroud was the guy's name that built the car and had a shop and was quite a body man. He welded aluminum and didn't do it with a wire welder, a torque, or a TIG welder anymore. It was a torch and a piece of aluminum rod.
Yeah.
And anyway. It was.
How complete was the car when you found it?
Complete.
Wow, that's good.
Except for a radiator.
Okay.
And Jerry Weeks Baker in Indianapolis.
He's an excellent
built
fabricator.
Me a VH60 radiator.
Good.
It's Bill Jones from San Antonio blessed it and said that is a Kurtis Craft frame. And the body parts, you get 2 halves and weld them down the center and the nose, and anyway, it's a Kurtis Craft.
You had told me that you saw this car race when you were youngin'?
When I was 9 years old in Tulsa, Oklahoma. We lived there when Dad was head of maintenance for the Oklahoma Air National Guard. He used to go out every Saturday. He took me to the midget races, and that's what got me hooked on wanting to be a race car driver.
And that's when midget racing was as big as baseball, football, everything.
It was the exciting thing. After the war, race fans are fans of anything exciting. That was what they went to see, the midget races. Man. And they were big.
Man, and this was a car. Wow.
Yes, this was a good, and the engine, I've just gotten it rebuilt. Found a flathead mechanic in Dallas, and he put together, it's a VH-60, the very small, the very first V8s that Henry Ford made for the 32s and the
Is that Brian Bass?
Yep.
Yeah, he's a friend of mine. He's a good guy.
Okay, yes.
Good hot rod builder, good guy.
Yeah. Anyway, he just finished up my engine.
Cool.
And it's ready to go in the car when I get home. But I've got a lot of other things to finish up.
Yeah.
You know how the rebuilding or recovering something.
Yeah. Man, that's cool. Man, thank you. Thank you. It has been an honor.
Thank you.
And I
enjoyed it.
Like I said, I've heard, numerous people have asked you about the Indianapolis history, and you've earned it. You won 3 of them. But I wanted to hear about sprint car racing.
Yeah, well, thank you. I like to talk about sprint car racing in the days, and it's
you still
different.
go to the Chili Bowl too, correct?
Oh yeah.
You're still a fan of the.
Yeah, love to go. That's all the midget racing you ever hope to see is at the Chili Bowl, and it's great.
Are you a fan? Whose drivers you watch today? Other than, we all watch Larson.
Yeah.
And Christopher Bell's coming on.
Yep. I guess he's coming on 3 in a row. That's pretty good.
Yep.
Yeah, those guys are exceptional. And the sprint cars, the midgets today have as much horsepower as the sprint cars we used to race.
That's
back
unreal.
in the,
And they can actually hook it up and do something with it.
Oh yeah.
That's the other part.
That is.
I keep telling people, younger guy, I've got a nephew that's just turned 16, and he's a big Christopher Bell fan. And I said, enjoy that, because when you get older, you're gonna be happy and proud to say you saw Christopher Bell coming up.
Yeah.
Just like you guys, like, I saw Rutherford coming up and stuff like that. That's important.
Yeah.
And you got to know it when it's happening.
That's nice.
And it's an honor. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
That was excellent. Man, thank you.